All right, good morning. So, we're going to go over one section today. We're starting human geography. We did physical geography last week. If you don't remember those, go watch those videos again. We did landforms and resources and climate and vegetation. We skipped human environment interaction. Now we're going to get to the human geography of East Asia. Remember, the East Asia countries are China, Mongolia, Taiwan, North South Korea, and Japan. So we're going to talk about today, section one being China. We're going to talk about that. All you're going to have today is your vocab. Do your vocab by Friday, and then this 5-question matching quiz over the notes today. And that's it. There's a lot of other work that we've done previously in this day, but since we're not here, I'm letting you off easy. All right, so let's look at this very quickly. So section one is China. It's the largest, most influential. So that's why we're talking about it first. It is the world's oldest continuous civilization. Yes, like Mesopotamia was there before China was, and the Indus River Valley civilization was there before China was. But this is the oldest continuous. I mean, it's been a culture, a continuous culture for over 4,000 years. So it's had settled society for over 4,000 years. So that goes way back, about 1700 BC, I think is what your book says. So China was ruled by dynasties for a lot of that time. A dynasty is a series of rulers from the same family, and it's like a monarchy, but the dynasty has more power, and it's passed down in that family for generations until it gets overthrown, usually. And you'll learn in world history class about why they were overthrown. Sometimes there were reasons that, like weather and weather systems, that even helped overthrow governments. But um, we're not going to talk about that. Too much Chinese history. So China was ruled by these dynasties for a long time. The first dynasty was the Shang dynasty, then the Zhao dynasty, and then this is pronounced Qin, the Qin dynasty, and that's how they got its name. The China obviously came from this Qin. Um, the thing you probably know about China, maybe from Mulan, I don't know, but from other things, is Great Wall of China. It was built over, not all at once, but over a couple, probably a couple decades. It was built to protect China from invaders. And so we'll see on this map on this next page. But China slowly expanded its territory and expanded its dynasty. Each dynasty claimed more and more territory and more land. In 1911, the last dynasty. So China had dynasties all the way up until the early 1900s. In 1911, the last dynasty was overthrown by Chinese nationalists, and that ended the Chinese Empire. So you can see here the first one, and then it spread out a little bit more here with the Qin dynasty. There's the Great Wall of China. It was built to stop the invading Mongolians here. Then you had the Han Dynasty spread out farther, and then you had the Qing Dynasty went out even farther than that. That went a whole lot of territory. And here's present day. This light green is present day China. So you can see it's a little bit smaller than what it was in the Qing Dynasty, but it's still pretty large here. China opened up its trade to, you might have heard the name Marco Polo before. China kind of first was seen by Europeans through him, and he came back and wrote stories about China and all the things that they had. But it was really closed off for a long period of time because of deserts and mountain ranges. It goes back to our geography, our physical geography. Deserts over here and mountain ranges over here and up here helped kind of keep it isolated from other people. But eventually, whenever the rest of like in the 1200s, whenever India and Columbus is sailing the ocean blue in the 1400s, more and more Europeans are starting to head this direction. And so eventually in the 1700s, Europeans kind of took advantage of China and made it sign some treaties um, that granted them different privileges, um, and like made them only sign treaties with them that they could only trade with certain Europeans. And so it's kind of unfair treaties. And eventually China, like Africa, it was divided up um, in the early 1900s. It was divided up into different, what they called spheres of influence. And that's going to be a question on your quiz here. They called them spheres of influence. And so basically, um, Russia had some territory. Great Britain was here in the orange. France was here. Germany was here. Spain here, and Russia up here. So they all had kind of their own territory where they could control that area. And so those are spheres of influence. Eventually, the Chinese, like Africans, like other people, don't like being controlled by outside forces. They ended up rebelling against them, and that was called the Boxer Rebellion. And the Boxer Rebellion, the Chinese rose up against the Europeans, but eventually Europeans kind of squashed that revolution because they had more power and people and guns. And then eventually this guy, you might have heard this name before, Mao Zedong. It's this guy here. He's kind of like the revered communist leader of China. China has, I mean, all communism has their kind of leader, Kim Jong, not Un, his dad. What was his dad's name? Kim Jong Il, and his dad before that, Kim Jong's son, I believe, were kind of the viewed upon high leaders of communism. Stalin might be, or Marx, or Lenin would be that for Russia. Fidel Castro in Cuba. They all kind of have their leaders that they look up to. Well, Mao Zedong was that for China. And so he defeated the Chinese nationalists. Remember, they were the ones that overthrew the Chinese empire. He overthrew them and implemented communism in China. And communism was, like the promise is whenever Russia took over, was to make everybody equal, make everybody rich by industrializing and helping everybody out. But it didn't, I mean, it made the government more powerful. It didn't make the people more powerful. China today, even though a lot of things that you probably have in your house right now are made in China, China is still not even a first world country. It's more of a second world, sometimes even a third world country, more of a second world, because still 60% of the people in China work on farms. So you have majority of people still work on farms. You do have humongous cities that are on the coast where a lot of businesses are, a lot of things that you have in your house that are made in China, a lot of the U.S. businesses, they're all on the coast, on the East Coast, but the rest of China is mostly made up of workers and agriculture workers, farmers. They produce rice, maize, which is corn, wheat, and sweet potatoes. Shanghai is kind of the Chinese center of manufacturing and industrial centers, one of the biggest industrialized cities. It has a lot of textiles, and a lot of the clothing that you wear comes from there. But like I said, they're still technically maybe a second world country because of a lot of people still do agriculture. And being that they're 4,000 years old, what this says here, being that they're 4,000 years old, they have a highly developed culture. So they have a lot of history, a lot of culture in that history. It's influenced Korea and Japan and the other countries that surround it. And one of the ways that it influences them is through this thing called Confucianism. You might have heard of Confucius, but Confucianism is this movement. It's not really a religion. It's a movement based on the teachings of Confucianism. And what he stressed was the importance of education and order in society where you respect your elders. So it was a big thing on order. You respect your elders, and in return, they'll respect you and do what's best for you and make laws that help you. And you treat your children well, and they're going to respect you. And it's kind of the system based on respect. And so you had these levels of respect from the top down to the bottom. So their culture was built on respect. You also have Taoism, which is this philosophy of way to live by, which believed in harmony, the yin and yang. That's kind of based off of Taoism. And then eventually Buddhism came into China from India, which we've already talked about Buddhism in India. And it was really important and still is an important religion in China. And last but not least, China's population is over 1.5 billion. They have 30 to 40 cities with over 1 million people in them. We don't really know for sure because they're not too open with their stats. Like I said, most of the people live on the coast, just like most of the people live on our northeast coast in New York and Boston and Washington and up there. Most of the people live on their east coast. China's big problem is trying to get good health care for all those people because they're one of the most populated countries with India. And so their problem is how do they get health care to all the people, not just here, but the people out here as well, where most of the people are farmers and don't live and work in big cities. All right, so make sure you do your vocab, do that quiz. Next time we'll talk about Mongolia and Taiwan.